Things that you can do at home. I wonder how you have found it as part of a competition, whether you found it quite difficult or whether you've managed to let your imagination run wild. And we'll see quite a variety of images tonight. So two of the things that I'm looking for as part of a judge is, first of all, the subject matter. For me, it's got to be fairly interesting. I've got to want to go back and look at it again. I don't just want to say, I've seen it, I want to move on to the next image. It's got to kind of hold my attention. And that's really what most judges are looking for as part of competition images. And then the second thing is all about, especially as it's tabletop, it's all about lighting as well. So we'll see a number of examples tonight where people have played with the lighting and turned something very ordinary into something just a little bit more special. So instead of being very, very flat lighting, they've started to add modelling to that. And for me, that's what's made a more successful image. So the first one I want to talk about tonight is printed circuit board. So here the lighting is quite flat and even, and I think this is quite suitable lighting that's displayed. Is here it's almost like a macro picture. You could almost say you've used the same techniques as you would do for taking fungi natural history. You want everything sharp from corner to corner. The author looks like they've positioned the camera directly over the area that they wanted to show me. And so as part of choosing the correct or an appropriate aperture, everything's pin sharp from corner to corner. So whether that's f5.6, f8, get everything pin sharp. You've got a central point of focus as well. You've got some resistors that are in the center. And as much as you have got green detail around the outside, and you've got some of the copper connections as well, that then allows me to move around the image, but it's sharp where it needs to be. I believe it's well exposed. It's got plenty of detail. It is interesting as well. So we're going to start with a 15.
Lucy Wilson.
So next one, as it says, and I do like the play on the title as well. Normally the titles are secondary parts of what a judge should be commenting on, but sometimes it can help the judge to show what you're actually looking at as well. Here, relatively obvious. First of all, you've got that bright orange colour that immediately attracts me. I know exactly where I'm looking at. There is a point of interest. As part of seeing this image, there is writing, and whenever you see writing in a frame, regardless of where it is, so whether it's a shop front or it's on an object like's displayed here, then your eye is always drawn to it. And it can always be a little bit disconcerting if it's not pin sharp. It's always slightly out of focus because your eye wants to go and read that. Here, I think it's appropriately sharp as well. The author has also put a little bit of extra kind of spice into the image. So we read an image from left to right, so I can move in from the left-hand side. I can follow almost what is the end of the image, because it looks like whatever's been pierced has been pierced from the right-hand side. I can follow back down the water, and I immediately hit the stop of the can. So the can then stops my interest going out of the right-hand side of the frame. Also, just to add an extra bit of interest, you've got movement, so you can see, for me, adding movement within a static image always makes it more pleasing as well. Having the darker background and a fairly bright can as well, I think the two contrasting colours work very, very well as well. And I think it's always important, even though you've got a dark background, that you've got a base to your image as well. And you can see here it's whether it's been placed on a mirror or it's been placed on a dark piece of glass or table, I can see a little bit of the reflection of the can, and I can see some of the water as well. So I can really kind of differentiate between what's the base of the image and what's the back of the image as well. So I'm going to score that one a 15.
Mandy Foreman. There we go.
So I like a number of things to start with about this image. So first of all, we've got a diagonal composition. So as I say, we generally read an image from left to right. So I can move in from the bottom left. I can go all the way up the stem to the head of the flower, and diagonally across the frame, I find that a little bit more dynamic than if it was just placed centrally in the frame. Here, I think that the head of the flower is interesting as well. It's sharp where it needs to be. So there's plenty going on from that respect. For me, though, what kind of lets it down a little bit, the image, is the background. So whenever you get a large amount of white or a highlight within the frame, your eye is always drawn to it. So could I suggest to the author, maybe, I'm not sure what the background was, whether they had used a white piece of paper, but maybe try and get an off-white piece of paper, maybe get a little bit of textured piece of paper. So from Epson, do a watercolor. I sometimes use that as a bit of a backdrop, and it just adds a little bit of interest. It doesn't overpower the main subject, but just adds a little bit of interest to take away that very, very stark white. And I think for me, that unfortunately lets it down. So that one gets a 14. Can we hold that one, please? I liked it to start with because it's quite a graphical image. And whenever you do something that's very, very different from the norm, it can work with you or it can work against you because it is so different. And so I applaud the author for experimenting. It's not for me as a judge to try and guess how you've created it, but just to look at the final image. I think that the coloration works, and I think that the texture works together, and it's an interesting pattern, definitely. Unfortunately, the title possibly doesn't tell me exactly what I'm looking at. So if it was some kind of nature or natural history that you had, I don't know, you'd either, captured some kind of sand pattern and you'd photographed it on the tabletop or something like that, then it possibly would have been nice to have known exactly what I was looking at if it was a nature style image. However, if it is displayed as a graphical image like this, then absolutely you can be creative as you want with the title. For me, when I look at it, there's always got to be, as part of an image, a main focal point for that, and then it puts the rest of the image into kind of context of what I'm looking at. So for me, I'm starting to kind of search around. So is it the bottom right hand side or is it the top left hand side that is the focal point? And my eye starts to move between the two instead of resting on one and then putting the rest of the image into context. The other thing I'll say about kind of pattern pictures is sometimes they work better as panels as well. So you might have produced some kind of technique, whether this is digitally or even on film in your camera to do something. So maybe if you were going to show me one, why not put it into a panel of 3 instead? You can still, I'm sure, as part of your rules, put it into a normal competition, but just creating a panel might just then give you a little bit more of an effect than just one of the images. So I'm going to award that one a 14. I liked the idea of this, of kind of light painting with light. and I'm hopefully that the author had an awful lot of fun trying to experiment with fairly kind of long exposures doing this. So once again, rather like the tango picture that we looked at, we've got, or the author has put in movement within a static image here. So I think for me, kind of the light painting that's going round the object that's in the center looks like some kind of dog. I think for me works, it adds something. Also, once again, having that darker background, I think allows that red and black to come out as well. You've got those complementary colors. The author's light painted it or lit the object in the middle in such a way that I can see quite clear defined edges of that object as well. So even though some of it would be quite dark, so it looks like it's probably made of glass and you've got the some kind of reflection in it as well, I can still see very clear defined edges against the background. They're not starting to merge together. And also as part of that pattern, I think it's attractive. It's almost like a frame within a frame as well. And so as part of that, I will give that a 15.
Lucy Wilson.
So as photographers, we always go for kind of groups of odd numbers. So whether that's 1, 3, 5 or 7. Here, having a 3, I think it shows me 3 very, very slightly different but related objects. Whenever I see multiple objects within a scene, they've all got to kind of relate to each other, not just be kind of random objects. And I can see here they've both got similar in shape and texture and in colour as well. And I can see that these have been quite strongly but evenly lit as well. As I've said before, I can see a base to the image as well. It looks like it's on a table and then possibly a white wall behind. Even though they are both white, I can still see the separation between the two. But I go back to what I kind of first said at the beginning of the evening when I said what I look for as part of quite a successful image is once I've seen the image, do I want to go back and look at it again and get something very slightly different? And I think for this, unfortunately, once I've seen it and I've seen the attractive patterns, I do wonder whether the writing just on the right-hand side, the lower right-hand side, would actually have told me just something else to go and look at, another point of interest. But unfortunately, it's only showing half of the text. I think, unfortunately, I want to move to kind of the next image. Once I've seen it, I've seen it. Maybe can I suggest to the author once again, it's all about, for probably an object like this, to make it more interesting and probably to move up the point scale as such, is kind of start playing with the lighting. So you can use lighting in lots of different ways. You can use, obviously, the natural light or from a window, or you can use a table lamp, or you can use torches like we've looked at, light painting. There's lots of different ways then to add just a little bit extra to what could have been an ordinary image as well. So part of the judge's responsibility is not just to comment, is also to try and suggest to people how they can improve their photography as well. So for me, this one scores a 13. Can we hold that one back, please? I like the image. Once again, as I've already said before, titles are secondary parts to the image. And as part of this, I would have liked a description of what kind of snake potentially that I'm looking at. Kind of twee titles sometimes can be very, very misleading. And it's something in exhibitions, if you ever start to enter your images in kind of higher levels outside of your club, it's something that really kind of judges start to almost raise an eyebrow out at as well. So that's just something to bear in mind. However, the title has had no bearing on the score that I've given it. you don't need to always show me, or as part of creating images, an entire object, because your mind can guess what the rest of the object is. So, for example, you could take the head of a cow, and most of us probably could imagine what the rest of the cow is like. Here, as part of the snake, we can imagine the rest of the snake anyway. So the bit that you have concentrated on, I think, has told me an awful lot, even though I've not seen this animal before, of what I'm actually looking at. Also, as part of a portrait, the eye is absolutely pin sharp as well. And I think it's important in humans and in animals to make sure, in most cases, the eye is absolutely pin sharp. You've also got a little bit of catchment, catch light in the eye as well. It looks like there's been an external light source. You can see some of the speckles, some of the highlights on the snake's skin as well, but none of those are distracting. So I congratulate the author for controlling the light source. And then just to add just that little bit extra, it's also got its tongue out as well. And you can see there, once again, it's almost like adding a little bit of movement, something a little bit extra to show, A, the snake is alive, B, it's probably moving, even though quite slowly as well. And the third thing that I can kind of congratulate the author, I think that they've used the appropriate depth of field for the angle of view that has been presented. So tongue is fairly sharp, and also the eye, then just behind the head, and then it slowly then starts to fade. So whether you've used kind of f5.6, f4, just to kind of get that graduated loss of detail towards the background, I think all of that for me fits together as well. And so I give that one a 15.
Mandy Foreman.
Another one about light painting as well. Doing light painting with kind of glass objects, not only do they kind of reflect the light, but also in this case, you get diffraction as well as the light passes behind the object. Once again, these swirls that move through, they are very, very slightly different colors. You've got the blues, the whites, and the reds, so complementary colors. And you can move from the top kind of central part of the frame, and you can move within the frame. So each time the kind of whatever object you've used for light painting has never gone off the sides of the frame. So my interest then doesn't want to move to the left or the right. You're always keeping me in, and kind of you're forcing me as a viewer to come down to what I believe is the focal point, which is possibly a glass marble. I also like the reflection as well, that's also been included. So as part of that kind of careful framing, and also the kind of the added dimension of that, once again, movement in a static image as well, I found that quite an attractive image, and that one also scores 15.
Harold Weatherly.
Lily. So here, once again, even though you've got an awful lot of white within the frame, you've got kind of almost different levels of off-white. So we've got a pure white base. Then we've got the vase, which has got a pattern in it as well. So we're not being completely overpowered by white. And then the background is an off-white as well. So I think those fit together. You've placed it centrally in a frame, and normally, you know, people always talk about putting things on the third. Well, sometimes the object fits far more comfortably in the center of the frame. So statues, vases of flowers, etc. You don't always have to use the rule of thirds. It can always good to break it. Here, you've also got the 3 lilies as well. It's absolutely pin sharp where it needs to be all the way through, and there's plenty of detail. It looks like you've taken it in quite flat, overcast lighting, so rainy days are absolutely fantastic for doing still life in front of the window. One thing I would possibly suggest to the author is whether you've placed this on a table and you've placed the table next to the wall, why not try producing a little bit of a slightly different background. So for example, maybe get a large white or an off-white piece of card or paper and put a bend in it and almost have a curve. So then you wouldn't have had such a severe break between your table and your wall with that kind of darker line that's running through the image. That's something possibly to help you with it. However, I think that the lighting has been completely suitable on the day. You've got no reflections in the pot. You've got no highlights where you need to be as well. Something else that possibly you could use to enhance your image is, it's very fashionable now to start using textures. So here, some of the textures, so whether you take pictures of brick walls or paving stones when you're out on your walk, providing Boris lets us after 8 o'clock tonight, you know, go and take things like that, start to overlay. Once again, it just transforms what could be quite an ordinary object into something for you to start experimenting with, and also kind of almost start you on that creative journey as well. However, all that said, I think that the background fits together with the pot and the detail, and that one gets a 15.
Dan Johnson.
So here, the author's put a diagonal composition, and I think that then adds to a little bit more strength. Possibly, I would have preferred it to be from the bottom left to the top right. However, it's your personal preference to put it that way as well. You have got writing in the frame and you have cut off some writing at the bottom and at the top. However, what you have shown, especially with the two saying noon and evening in the centre, once again, your mind can fill out what the rest of the text would be as well. You've got the point of interest, which is kind of the tablets as well. They are quite almost repetitive as well. So you've got the white ones, you've then got the capsules as well with the two colours. Might not have been possible trying to kind of break up that repeating pattern. So could I have suggested to the author possibly use the white tablets, use the kind of the capsules, and then if it had been possible, break that sequence completely and see if you could beg, borrow, or steal a red tablet and put that in. Because what you'll start to have is almost kind of a repeating pattern, and then it kind of jars you as a viewer to say, I've got a red tablet. So the mind always you're always drawn to red things in images. So people with red coats, people with red umbrellas, all of those kind of things. So having a slightly different colour, once again, could just add something a little bit different. However, once again, the darker background, especially with the off-white plastic as well, I think then just adds kind of a little bit more of a 3D effect as well. So I'm going to give that one a 13. I liked the idea of this. And, you know, as part of some of the images that we'll see tonight, there's been some very, very kind of creative ideas. So I congratulate you as a club for trying to think outside the box. You've got, as part of your focal plane, you have got the plane that obviously is in focus. So for me, that is the kind of the point of interest because it's the sharpest point. I think the objects that are around the frame do add to what I'm looking at as well. You know, as part of the coloration of whether it's apples in the bowl on the right-hand side and the oranges as well, you know, you can see that it is a kind of a dinner time table as well. You've got one or two speckly highlights that are around. They aren't distracting. There's nothing burnt out as part of that. So I I think that it does work. You've got space once again for the aircraft to move into from that top left towards the centre, then towards the other side. If it was my image, I would be very tempted on the right-hand side to put a very small crop on it. So as part of that, you've got a highlight that's kind of running as part of that white wall. So you've got an option of whether to crop it or use the distort tool in Photoshop and just bend that door very, very slightly out. So you've got a darker edge to the frame. Whenever you get a highlight right on the edge of the frame, it can be very, very distracting, unfortunately. So that's what I would do if it was my image, to just improve it a little bit more. However, I think the idea and the concept are there as well. So that one gets a 14. As it says, kabloom, and a flower against a darker background. So the outer parts of it looks like there are two flowers on the left and the right, I think, stand out against, once again, that black background as well. You've got great coloration. I think for me, though, it's very, very contrasty, the image, from the way that it's been lit, and secondly, probably because your camera has seen an awful lot of dark and has tried to balance out your exposure as part of that. So I think for me, it's the lighting that lets down this image. I think as part of this, I also am not too keen on having that very kind of dark strip down the middle as part of that lighting as well. I think, and overall, when I think of flowers, I think of kind of light and airy style pictures, rather like the lilies that we looked at as well. And I think that lighting would have been more suitable for these flowers as well. So I'm going to give that one 13. This is another one that I thought was a very, very clever as part of putting together elements in a scene and making sure that they're all related as well. I also liked it because it's quite topical, being Christmas as well. You can quite clearly see from the arrangement of the bottles, Mary and Joseph, baby Jesus, 3 shepherds or a few shepherds and 3 wise men as well. So I congratulate the author for trying to think outside of the box and putting together these images. I'm not sure whether the kind of the star effect in the background has been put into the image as part of as part of a composite, or it was there as part of a background. I think for me, it looks like it possibly could have been dropped in. There are just 1 or 2 slight areas that I would have maybe tried to have just feathered in. So the way that the bottles or the bottle tops interact with that background as well, just where it could be feathered out very, very slightly to not make it as obvious as well. But I think the straw and I think the bottles arranged in that quite recognisable topical scene is quite suitable for this competition and clever as well. So I'm going to give that one a 14. I liked the play on this as well. So you have created a frame within a frame using the ice that is around the watch. Also, as part of that, I like the contrasts as well. So you've got the metal of the watch against the kind of the slightly opaque texture of the ice as well. You've gone in fairly close, but it is sharp all the way across the frame as well. You've done very well to control quite a lot of the reflections. Ice can be quite troublesome, trying to get, darkening down some of those highlights, but you've angled yourself in such a way that there's nothing kind of catching my eye. I can go straight to the center of the watch, and it's sharp. And I think it kind of fits the competition. It's quite a graphical image as well. And that one scores a 15.
Tina Cordukes.
I liked the placing of the shell on the mirror. I think having the reflection adds a little bit extra as well. I think the lighting is quite suitable. I can see most of the detail of the shell, and even in the kind of the shadow areas, there is still detail there as well. The background, I think, works and also helps that you've got some of that background reflected into the mirror as well. The reason why I've kind of knocked it down a point or two is I just feel that the depth of field isn't as large as it possibly could have needed to have been. So as part of this, it looks like maybe your camera's decided, or whether you put it on auto, kind of F4, and really you want to be shooting something like this, probably F8, F11, F16, if you can get it. So kind of putting your camera on a tripod, maybe if you're, the light isn't as strong as you'd like it, so you're getting quite a slow shutter speed to make sure it's sharp. You'll probably want to boost your ISO, your sensitivity on your camera as well. But I think for me, the bit of the shell which is on the right hand side, I would like to have seen more detail and more in focus as well. I think the size in the frame is absolutely spot on, quite suitable, but I think it's just that depth of field. So for me, that one gets a 14. Can we hold that one, please? I liked the idea, and as I've already said, whenever I see kind of multiple elements within a frame, do they all fit together? And I think that the baubles, I can see how they're all related. They're all very slightly different, but they're all related. Once again, you've got the three outside, but I think having them in the box is a frame within a frame. And also the background, even though it is patterned, it is textured, it is complementary to the baubles as well. So you can see, that kind of Christmas feel going all the way through. Quite flat lighting, but I think it's been controlled reasonably well. If it was me, I would be very tempted possibly to just try to see what the image would look like if I put on a vignette. So that means kind of darkening down the corners. So the main focal point absolutely is the box, and my eye can go between all of them. But just to make sure my eye doesn't wander into some of these very, very lighter areas, especially on the left-hand side, which is probably where the source of light is coming from. It's probably where the window is. Just darken down those corners, and it just might make the central kind of focal point just pop out a little bit more. So I'm going to give that one a 13. I liked the lighting on this to start with. So as I've already seen, you can see a base, but also I can see, instead of just having a plain black background, there is material in the background as well. And I can see where, instead of just being completely flat, there is texture as well. I especially like the lighting on the bottle and the way that the kind of the side lighting has really kind of differentiated between the backdrop and the actual bottle itself. So I can kind of quite clearly see where the bottle is and how big the bottle is compared to the background. Very kind of similar principles to when we're taking portraits of people as well. We want separation between the person and the backdrop as well. And I think that's been superbly done. The objects in the foreground, I think they're all interesting, and none of them are particularly competing with each other. They're all kind of very, very similar as part of size, shape, and, you know, as part of the, apart from the onion, kind of very, very similar in colour as well. I just wondered, to kind of push it a little bit further, how the objects or how kind of the, I think it's butternut squash and the onion and the garlic and the cauliflower are all related to the bottle of wine. I would think of wine and cheese, for example, to make that as part of a still life. So, you know, you could have your cheese, you could have your knife, and you could have your bottle of wine with your glass, and therefore all of your objects are related to each other. For me, I just kind of felt that I like the bottle of wine, but how are the rest kind of related as well? The other thing to kind of point out to the author is being absolutely critical. Kind of just the garlic that's at the front of the frame, and just be quite tempted, and maybe a little bit on the top of the cauliflower, just burn those down ever so slightly. You have got detail there, but probably you might just have one or two whites that are just starting to kind of burn out just a little bit. But the reason I'm going to give it 15 is because I feel that the lighting has really kind of brought it through. The other thing just to mention as well, not sure how many kind of beginners you've got as part of Lancaster, is the author here is a good example of how to use a key line. So generally, as part of images, then we can tell the difference between what's the image and what is kind of the background, the background, and what is the unused kind of space on the projector. And as part of here, where you've got quite a darker image, sometimes people put key lines round so you can see the difference between the two. And I think that works quite effective. So I'm going to give that one a 15.
Brad Cheek.
Hold that one back, please. I think the elements fit together, and you can almost kind of see the connection as part of colour that's moving through the frame. So I've got red on the base, on the tablecloth. I've got red on the jug, got red grapes, red apples, and I've also got red flowers as well. So you can see that connection that's running all the way through as part of the frame. I've kind of also got a balance on the left. I've got a stop on the left and a stop on the right, because I've got the jug and I've also got the vase of roses as well. And that keeps my interest in the frame. There is, as part of what's been displayed, the centre is a lighter exposure than the darker elements on the left and the right of the frame. So you've got, as part of that, quite almost a natural vignette. So those darker items are concentrating me into the kind of the main point of the image. I just felt, as part of a composition, that for me, it's just a little bit busy. So you've got an awful lot of apples in the centre. I think the jug, the vase balance each other out. You've got the grapes almost just off centre as well. They balance each other out. And then you've kind of got a group of apples, quite a lot of apples in the centre. You possibly might need to just simplify the composition just a little bit more to make it more effective as well. But I still think it's a good attempt, and that one gets a 15.
Dan Johnson.
Here, I can see the elements do fit together. You know, you've got the champagne, you've got the champagne glass as well, the bank card. I did wonder whether it was a line of white powder. I didn't, but I couldn't actually work out what the picture was on the iPad. So I wondered what kind of parties this author's going to. And then also a roll of money as well. and also a few tablets. I wouldn't like to cast any dispersions at all on what kind of parties these are. I think the elements do, I can recognise it as part of, the title, which makes it all hang together, party time. I just wondered, as part of the lighting, you've introduced, it looks like a little bit of colour, because I can see the reflections in the glass, especially in the wine bottle. I can see you've used some kind of green light, and there might be an orange and a red. Whether you could make those just a little bit stronger to really kind of give me that party time feel. Once again, you've not shown me the whole of the champagne bottle, but it doesn't matter because the wording on the bottle tells me what I'm looking at anyway. I'm not sure if, as part of those elements, whether the iPad fits in, whether that was the most suitable image or the most suitable element to have as part of that. I like all the others, but whether you could find something else to kind of complete that instead. So I'm going to give that one a 14. Once again, I'm not sure how it's been done. Is it attractive? Absolutely. Very, very kind of bold colours. And I think, once again, this is rather like the, I think I gave quite similar comments to Creature from the Deep, if I can remember, about when you have pattern pictures, do they stand up by themselves, or would they be more complementary as part of a graphical panel as part of this? So, as I've already mentioned kind of twice this evening, what is the focal point? What does the author want me to look at? Do they want me to just look at the overall scene, or do they want me to look at a particular element first and then the rest of it fits together? So I think it would be important for me to know what I'm looking at to appreciate the image a little bit more. So that one gets a 13. Sometimes it's always underrated, but humour in photography, sometimes we take things far too seriously. So once again, having kind of twee titles and images like this, absolutely acceptable in competitions. I can see it's a toy camera. I think it's actually a USB pen drive, but I can see the toy camera. I like the title and the way that it works. And I also like the object in the corner on the right-hand side. It is sharp where it needs to be, and I can see the connection between those two objects. I think that the depth of field the author has used to make sure that the front part of the frame closest is absolutely pin sharp. So the lens capper and whatever it should be kind of photographing. And then as part of that, you've got a fairly neutral background as well. I think all that fits together. I think once I've seen the image and appreciated it, then I probably want to move on to the next image. I don't feel, for me, it's something I could always go back to and enjoy and get something just a little bit more different out of it each time. So I'm going to give that one a 12. So the next one is called Infestation. And here the author has tried to do something kind of creative. And as part of that, I can see that, trying to create something with a kind of a bit of a sci-fi feel to it, possibly, I think does work. Whether the author's been watching Alien far too much, not too sure, or those kind of films. But I like you haven't actually just got a plain black background. It looks like, whether it's intended to be a moon or another sun, you can see that, and it breaks up that kind of very, very repeating black pattern. In the foreground, not quite sure what it is, but you can kind of imagine, it's going to open up and something's going to come out of it, and kind of, your imagination starts to run wild as such. There's a bit of a base to it and kind of a bit of a sci-fi feel to the bottom. Is it for me the strongest image in the competition? Probably not, but I also hope that the author learned something about technique, trying to actually do it, to try and actually photograph it, and also put it together to use your imagination as well. And so for me, that one gets a 13. So bobbins, it's an interesting group. I think that having all of those different colours, or well, it looked just about 2 of each colour as well, they do work together. I'm hoping as part of you having set this subject and actually photographing it, one of the hardest things that you found was even though everything is within your control, so nothing's going to get up and run off effectively, that it's quite difficult. You have to kind of stop and think about how you're going to arrange things, kind of the flow through the frame, what kind of contrasts with what to kind of build up that image. Here, yes, it is bobbins, but you've also got kind of very similar to the comment on, I think it was a lily, you've got a very, very stark background and very, very dominant colours as well. And so for me, it makes it quite a stark image. I would say try and build this up into a little bit more of a complex, interesting scene. So you've got the bobbins, maybe have a sewing kit or a needle, maybe burn that kind of quite dominant white background down just a little bit as well. So you could either select it and drop a different coloration in or slightly off as part of whatever computer software you use. That would be quite easy to select that, but probably start to build it up just a little bit more to make it more of an interesting scene for me. And so that one gets an 11. Could we hold that one, please? So Afterglow. I like that the author's gone in fairly close. It's not absolutely pin sharp all the way through from front to back, but does that matter? Absolutely not. For me, it's more about the coloration and the texture as well. And that's what comes across. I like the contrast between the 2 heads of the flowers. You've kind of got a reddish and you've got a purple as well. I just think as part of that lighting, once again, it's quite a contrasty scene. So maybe putting just a little bit more light, especially into underneath the flower. So whether it's lit from above, whether you could put some kind of reflector underneath and just get a little bit more detail, especially in that bottom right hand, the flower as well, I think for me would make it a little bit more pleasing. So that one gets a 14. I liked this as a graphical image. It looks like it's forks. So you've got an interesting base. It's not competing with anything else. And then as part of that, you've got that quite dominant blue ball just off center as well, almost like a macro picture. I think it does work. It's sharp where it needs to be as well. There's no highlights that are kind of catching your eye as part of that. And I enjoyed that image, but I didn't feel it was as strong as some of the others. So I'm going to give that one a 14. Can we hold that one, please? And that one. Okay, here I like the all the objects are contained within a frame, as in the cup and the saucer. So once again, a frame within a frame. So I really kind of know what I'm looking at. And here, kind of almost opposite to what I said about the bobbins, I like that you've got the cutting mat as a base. You've not just got a plain white base. You've got other bits and pieces that are, so you've still got the bobbins, but you can see the pins, you can see possibly some glue and some scissors as well. So all of those fit together as part of a scene, kind of a still life that all fits together as well. And so that's what I was talking about when I was trying to explain about the bobbins image. But this one, it all fits together. There's no highlights. You've photographed it in such a way that there are lots of things to look at, but not one is massively over competing with the other. They're all kind of sitting complementary within each other, all within kind of the cup as well. And so that one gets a 14. And the last one is vegetables. I liked the layering effect that's in this image. So I can go from the foreground, it's a lighter foreground from the cauliflowers to the beans. And then obviously you've got the tomatoes, which for me, I feel is the brightest part of the image, but I have got that diagonal composition. I think for me though, why it's going to score what it does is, where is the focal point? Where do you want me to look? So my eye is kind of moving around all of these bits and pieces, but there isn't a kind of a very clear defined frame as part of this. So, you know, we might go on holiday and see all these wonderful kind of spices, or go to the supermarket and see all these arrangements, but it can be quite difficult to try and make something kind of a pattern picture, to make sure that you've got something central to rest your eye on, and then everything else kind of fits around it as such. So as part of that, I'm going to give that one an 11. So I think that is the end, and we've held back 8. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I think there's 11 held back, Nick, isn't it?
Sorry?
Is it 11 held back? Or is it 8?
I think it's 8. Yeah.
8.
Right, so do you want me to tell you the numbers that I want first, if that's all right? Or are you just going to go through them and...
No, if you give the number that you want to see first, Alan should be able to put it up for you. Right,
not a problem. Okay. Can I start with number 9, please? I like the contrasting colours. I liked the yellow against the black background. And for me, having that splash really kind of adds movement into the image. I like that almost the seeing the level of the water, even though it splits the image into kind of 2 halves, it's almost like the before and after. I think it real kind of has impact as well. You know, there was quite a similar shot that I think I gave 15 for the tango, but I just feel for me, the lighting on this just made it more effective. And so that one gets a 16.
Gary Barton.
Can I have number 33, please? So I've talked about simple compositions. The main focal point, really, really obvious, because it's the cookie in the centre and it's been framed by the plate as well. You can also see the connection between the ribbon on the cookie and the ribbon that is decorating the top of the frame, which is keeping my interest in the frame. And then to balance out that ribbon, there is a cookie, very, very, very slightly not as sharp as the main cookie, but adds to it as if someone's had a quick nibble. So there were 2 cookies on the plate, but no one could resist it. And then also having that darker background, but just seeing the crumbs on the table, it just stops having those plain backgrounds that really kind of work and all fit together. And so that one gets a 16 as well.
Katie Alwabi.
Can I have number 19, please? As part of taking a still life and taking it a step further, I really enjoyed this. So the background, first of all, isn't plain because you've got some kind of pattern running through it, and you've got a wave, very, very slight wave that's running through that kind of splits 3/4. It's in the bottom third of the image, and I liked that kind of off-white. Also, it looks like it's some kind of plant in a vase, and then you have manipulated it to create something. But I think that the plant is interesting enough for your attention, but also the flower at the bottom as well. I think all of the colours fit together. They're all complementary, and I could actually see this as a print instead. As well, so printed on some kind of art textured paper, and I think it would do very well for the author, and that gets a 17.
Tina Cordukes.
Can I have number 5, please? Once again, I liked the idea. I liked the title. You can move in from the left, you can move along the barbed wire, and also having that kind of bright fruit as well. That is the kind of the central point. And my eye never goes out of the frame because you've put that frame within a frame again of the barbed wire. And so as part of the quite strong lighting and also placing it on a reflective surface as well, I think it all hangs together. And that one gets an 18.
Reg Haslam.
Can I have number 29, please? Yeah. And as part of the still life, whether it's part of the same author as well, I enjoyed this one. I think the elements fit together. I think having that central cup as well, that works. And I just felt it was quite a pleasing, simple, but effective image as well. And so that one gets an 18.
Katie Alwabi.
Can I have number 39? No, it's not 39. 32, please. And I've talked tonight so far about simple but effective images. So you've got the 3. They're all very, very slightly different from each other, the gunpowder flasks. So I found that interesting. I liked the way it had been lit as well. You've got texture, whether it's leaves and a few roses as well, and also a base. I think the candle adds just a little bit of extra as well, especially as you can see the reflection in the front gunpowder holder. And I just liked the arrangement and the way that it positioned. I think the backdrop, quite dark with a texture. You've got a vignette on it as well. The only thing I would say to the author is that kind of the frame, the key line that you've put round the object, it's a very personal taste. And when you start to get into the area of personal taste for things like this, it can be the difference between winning a competition or getting a gold medal at an exhibition and not getting one at all. So if you like it, absolutely, do produce your images how you would like and how you enjoy. I agree. But, you asked me to come as a judge and give my, if I saw this elsewhere against other images in competitions, possibly, that would be one of the elements that I would possibly look at and think, it just kind of, it doesn't sit as easy with me, just something to bear in mind. However, that one gets a 19.
Ruth Lockery.
And so there are, according to your rules, I can do this. So there are two 20s. So if we start with Alas Poor Yorick, kind of whether it's the same author, I liked that they all fit together. I liked the candles. I liked the elements do all fit. And also you've got, even though you've got text showing on that lighter book, so my eye kind of goes to it because it's the brightest part of the scene, it puts it all into context because it's obviously Hamlet as well. So you can see how all those things fit together. So that one is my first 20. And there's one image left, which I think is some kind of leaves. It is Holly, 22. Yeah. And I just felt as part of putting together something, so whether you just take a normal still life and play with the lighting, or you then take a picture and you take it a step further digitally or creatively as well. I liked the idea, you can find leaves like this, especially at this time of the year, in the garden. Quite a lot of it's been rotted away, but there's plenty of detail all the way through. I liked the coloration, one bigger than the other as well. And I just kind of felt it was quite a graphical image that fitted together. And as part of that was your other 20. So first one called Reflection. Can we hold that one, please? I wondered, being the age that I am, I won't reveal my age, but is this what I've got to look forward to in later life? All of these tablets, I wonder. I like the idea and I like the title as well. Absolutely still life. I think the lighting's been well controlled. I have got a vignette, so the corners are darker, so it's concentrating me more on the center. I've already mentioned about kind of writing in the frame. I think here the author has used quite a large depth of field, so probably F8, F11, maybe F16, because the front packet is sharp, and it's sharp all the way through as well. I think the lighting's been quite well controlled. And I think here that maybe kind of monochrome was a suitable choice to enter this into. So I'll mention kind of later on that some images I felt that possibly taking away the colour has taken something away of the viewing pleasure. So for me, monochrome is all about kind of shape and texture. And that was kind of one of my criteria for judging that section, as well as all the other bits and pieces. So it's always kind of interesting to bear in mind that not all images work equally as well in colour or monochrome, or kind of both. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But here, I think taking away all of the colour, I can imagine those packets being different colours. Just going back to kind of that shape and those empty kind of packets as well, I think has worked. You've gone in kind of fairly tight crop. I think that's been effective as well. But the fact that it's kind of sharp from front to back and I can read all of this text, I think has added to the image. Is there, kind of looking at objectively for the rest of the images I'm going to judge in the section, is there a focal point in the image? So is there a box that's bigger than all the others, or is there any writing that's bigger than all the others, or a packet that's different, just for me to have as a main focal point? And I think because all the boxes are relatively the same size and all the packets are the same size, my eye starts to kind of more wander around the scene instead of resting on a main focal point. That would be my only kind of comment from the composition that has been presented. So I'm going to give that one a 14. Can we hold that one, please? I liked what I found attractive was the kind of minimalistic elements that have been displayed. I think the lighting has been very well controlled. You've got a lot of reflections because you've got shiny metal, but there's nothing burnt out in the frame. There is detail all the way through. I can just about see as part of this low-key lighting that there is a fork. I like the pool of light as well that's been created. It adds a little bit more kind of atmosphere. I just felt that I wanted to see just a little bit more that's been displayed. So there's a very fine line between a minimalistic composition and not showing me enough. And I just felt that you needed to show me just a little bit more, not just the kind of the front forks of the fork. So that one for me gets a 14. As part of looking at kind of monochrome and the way that people do monochrome conversions, there's lots of different ways. Actually, in the new Photoshop, there's 9 different ways of converting your color files to monochrome. So you can choose lots. And what I like to see is I like to see a kind of a good range of tones within an image. So, you know, a deep black with still some detail, but also moving through to a highlight where you've retained the details and a good gradient in between. As part of this composition, all 3 elements are connected together. I can see that they're all kind of rocks and fossils. I feel that one is far stronger than the rest, which is the one at the back. I think for me, having those fossils are interesting. The other 2 possibly not as interesting. Also, it being a darker rock as well. That's where I'm kind of going for my blacks. I think just having maybe one of the rocks by itself, I think possibly would have been stronger. And can I suggest to the author maybe playing with the lighting a little bit more? So here, it's quite flat lighting. There's an awful lot of what I would consider to be grey within the image. So you've got an awful lot of what we would call 18% grey all the way through the frame, instead of a slightly larger range of tones. Now, if all the rocks are of kind of that colour, maybe playing with your lighting, maybe putting a little bit more monomer, maybe playing with the lighting just a little bit more to add more shape, texture to it, might have just given it a little bit more of an edge, I feel. It's what I would call acceptably sharp all the way through the frame. It's not absolutely pin sharp, especially looking at the front rock, but it's acceptably sharp all the way through. But I think for me, it's more about kind of the range of tones that has been presented. So that one gets a 12. I liked the idea of this as well. I think it tells a story, whether this has been, you know, you've cooked it at home and you've had this and then you've photographed it afterwards. The heads of the fish are sharp, and then it starts to tail off, pardon the pun, on at the top kind of left-hand side. And I think that's absolutely fine. I like that, you know, the eyes are missing. The title fits together once again as well. There's plenty of detail all the way through. You have got blacks, you have got whites, you have got a range of tones in between as well. I just felt that there were stronger images as part of the section of images to come as well. So that one scores a 15.
Mandy Foreman.
Can we hold that one, please? I liked the idea of this. I think having that white rose against quite a dark background, you've got your two extremes of contrast, and your barbed wire in between kind of joins the left and the right together, so I can move in from the left, I can follow the barbed wire, and it just adds a little bit more to the image. I felt as part of the image that there wasn't a base to the image. It looks like it probably is on a table that's dark as well. So there's no differentiation between the background, what is the background, and what is the table. Maybe a kind of a base to the image maybe would have improved it a little bit. But as part of kind of telling a story, I think that it's lit quite suitably, and all the details there as well. So I'm going to give that one a 15.
Reg Haslam.
Here, the author has gone in close and almost kind of filled with what the most interesting part of the flower, the tulip is, and filled it edge to edge in the frame. It's your choice whether you fill absolute edge to edge or you leave a little bit of space for the author to kind of move around in as well. That's your personal choice. I think the texture and the detail is there. But once again, you've got quite a light background. So you start to then very much start to kind of get dragged in to, especially more away from the point of interest, which has that diagonal composition from left to right, but also kind of more towards the top right hand of the frame, where it's just starting for me to kind of, well, there is no detail there at all. You've got some detail in the bottom corner where you've got shadow, so you've got more of a grey. But I just kind of feel toning down that white would just make the image just slightly less stark for the viewer as well. So that one scores a 12. I said at the beginning, sometimes images don't work as well in black and white or monochrome as kind of colour. So I'm guessing this is maybe lemons and limes. I just wonder, as part of this, whether colour would have made this image just a little bit stronger. But I feel because everything is almost towards kind of the extremities of the frame, so you've got an ice cube right on the left, you've got an ice cube right on the right, you've got two ice cubes right at the bottom of the frame, and everything is going towards the edge, that everything is so spaced out that it almost looks like it's not connected as part of the same scene. So there's having space within elements, absolutely, so it's not on top of each other, but also making sure that it's still part of a group as such. And so I just kind of feel, because the ice cubes and the fruit are almost getting to the point of being the similar size and almost a similar texture, that my eye starts to go between different elements all the time. I like the background, I like the water on the background, so whether it's a piece of plastic, which then obviously you've got pools of water, that makes an interesting backdrop. I just want probably the elements to be closer together for me to connect them as part of that frame. So that one gets a 12. Sometimes the best images are simple images. Judges are very simple people. We like simple pictures as well. And here, very, very simple. So I commend the author for having the idea. It's basically a black and a white glove. and you can see that both elements are connected together because the hands are together as well. I like that you've got a central kind of composition. I felt as part of the lighting, because you have got a black background, we've already mentioned tonight, I think I mentioned about the wine bottle, where you've got almost kind of key lighting. So you've got separation between your element and the background when they're both very, very dark. Here, the black glove is really kind of starting to merge into the background. It looks like it's been lit possibly from the top right-hand side, dare I suggest. Maybe try an experiment doing the same setup and just trying to put a light on the left or the right, just trying to put a little bit of rim lighting along kind of the hand element of the glove. And I just think it might give a more defined edge than just bleeding into the background. But I still think it's a great idea and it's still effective as well. And so that one gets a 15.
Tina Cordukes.
I liked the lighting here. I liked the pool of lighting. It acts as a frame. And once again, you've got that glass. It looks like a glass angel. And because of that, you've got separation between some of the darker and some of the lighter elements as well. I think that does work. As part of having kind of, it looks like it's the source of light that is in the frame. Whether you intended it to be some kind of, look like a heavenly intervention or a halo or something like that. I think it works to a point, but it becomes quite powerful, that element, because it is quite large as well. I wonder whether it would have been possible to control it a little bit more as part of it. The other thing to note as part of the frame is I just don't think the subject is sharp enough. So you are going to be dealing probably with a light source like that, quite a slow shutter speed. So I wondered whether you had used a tripod, or if you've not, I recommend using a tripod to make sure everything's pin sharp. But I just don't think, unfortunately, it's sharp enough. So that one gets a 12. Quite a strong main focal point. You've got the white face of the watch, so it drags you to it. You've retained detail where it needs to be, and then you've coiled the chain of the watch around the face of the watch as well. So once again, it's keeping my interest in the frame. I can almost move in from the bottom, almost center of the frame, follow the chain round, and I'm never actually taken out of the frame on the left or the right or the top or the bottom, and I can move then right to the center of the frame. Also, the authors added a vignette to the image as well, once again concentrating my interest to the center of the frame. I think I've got quite a reasonable range of tones as well within the image. So I've got a black, I've definitely got a white as well, and it's sharp where it needs to be. I also think having that kind of greyish textured background as well adds something to it. It's not just a plain background, it adds something, but it's not detracting away from the main image. So that one gets a 15.
Graham Harvey.
I liked the play on this as well. And here, I think the author, it's made it slightly more effective than the other composition that we saw with the tablets arranged, because the author started to play with the light just a little bit more, which adds a little bit of modelling. And here you can see from the angle that's been taken that some of the boxes are very, very different. So for me, the main focal point would be the kind of almost like the main street, the main highway with the 4 lots of tablets in it as well. And I think showing upside down, showing some that have been pressed out and some that are still in the packet as well, kind of shows the car, almost like cars, and it does give a kind of a city impression as well. I think also having it on a black background here, once again, just kind of accentuates the textures as well. I think it's a clever idea, and I had actually put it on my score sheet as 14, but I've changed my mind because it's judge's prerogative, and I'm going to give it a 15. Now I've seen it again.
Bill Popper Weatherly.
Can we hold that one, please? And that one as well, please. And that one. And then just to be very boring, that one as well. Okay. I liked the idea. I liked the recession. So here, the author has played with their depth of field to make sure that I've got a central focal point, but you can see there's enough detail in the background to see the Queen and the King, so you can see how they're all related as well. Also, as part of that recession, you've got that left to right diagonal composition through, getting from a small pawn all the way through to the largest piece on the board as well. I think that it does work. You've also got a little bit of gradient as well in the bottom third of the image, so I can see a base against the background. It doesn't just look like 3 pieces that are stuck on a black background, cut out and put on a black background. So you've got that recession in the frame as well. And I think that the lighting has been very well controlled as well. So there's no highlights. Everything that needs to be sharp is sharp as well. And so as part of that, I'm going to give that one a 15.
Jan Kent.
So this was one of the images that I was talking about when I said that sometimes I just kind of, my own personal feeling is that some images work better in colour than they do in monochrome. And I think for me, this was one of them. I expected, as the title said, blossom, it's going to be pink, texture, etc. And I think having the grey, and especially against a grey background as well, is there is no kind of graduated tones across the image. Everything is what you would call kind of 18% grey all the way across. And really what, as I've said, hopefully you'll have seen a pattern in the judgings, is that it's all about kind of light and shape. And I just don't think as part of the lighting, that's coming across. Also, you've got, it looks like quite a reflective surface on it as well. And so if the flowers, as the comments, because I can see the comments that come in as well. So if the comments say that the blossom is white, I would have liked to have seen it kind of converted as white then, and show it as white and not as a grey as part of the conversion. I think that for me has let down the quality of the image. And once again, I'm just not struck on this key line that kind of is not encompassing the whole image. It's kind of going through. So I'm going to give that one a 14. As I say, sometimes the title needs to help you understand what you're looking at. And for me, this is where it's one of those subjects where I would have used title to show me what it is, and it's not telling me. So obviously I can judge, I can obviously comment on what I see, but I don't understand what I'm seeing. So you were there at the time, you obviously understood what you were taking, and you've also got to then remember that you're then trying to convey what you saw as part of composition, shape, texture, and what you and the object to somebody else who wasn't there. And that's probably the most difficult part of photography, is to try and get that across. So I can see that I've got a good gradient of tones in there. I've got dark areas, I've got white areas, not burnt out at all. But once I've seen the image, is there anything more for me to get from it than I've already seen? Do I want to go back and look at it again? And I think as part of the composition and the area that you've shown, I want to kind of move on to the next image. So for me, that one scores an 11. I like the diagonal composition. You've only shown me a little bit of the onion skin, but I can imagine what the rest of it looks like as well. I think that there is texture, there's detail there. It's sharp where it needs to be as well. I just feel that there are stronger images as part of lighting and composition. So that one gets a 12. Thought this was quite well seen, and whether your shaft of light was created using a piece of software afterwards, or you have actually achieved that effect in your lighting and in camera as well, I think the end result is quite effective. So you've added, as part of that kind of shaft of light, you've got that kind of natural vignette having the darker areas. I can see what effects what you're trying to achieve as well. And as part of that, I can see the relationship between the smaller bubble and the larger bubble as well. And so that one for me gets 14. We hold that one, please. I thought it was quite well done. I think it's a person riding a bike. They're all very, very slightly different textured stones, but I think that they all work together as part of the scene that you've seen. Once again, it's one of these where once you've seen it, is there anything more to get to it? Could you have taken the idea a step further? It is a very static image. Obviously, it's rocks. Could you have added some kind of effect to add something a little bit different? So movement. So we're expecting that person to be on a moving bike. Could you have done something? Could you have added something else to make it, to try and push it up that point score a little bit more? What I'm looking for is obviously something a little bit different as well. So as part of that, you obviously want to try and catch my kind of imagination as well. But I still think putting it together as part of what's seen, it's quite a recognisable shape, and it does work. And that one gets a 15.
Dan Johnson.
I liked the range of textures on here. Plate not burnt out at all. There's detail all the way there. You've got the 3 eggs. I think that the lighting and the shadow that's been cast as well. Very, very kind of subtle but works as well. So you've got the darker background, you've got the white plate acting as the frame, and then you've got something of interest in the frame, which also reflects the frame as well. So kind of that egg shape and the circular, you can see how it all fits together. And so that one gets a 15.
Brad Cheek.
Kind of rather like the fork picture. I liked the idea of not showing me everything, but is what you're showing me enough to tell me what I'm looking at? And it is. I can imagine that even though you've only shown me half a helmet, that it's the same on the other side. You've added a little bit more kind of mystery to what's been shown, because it's very, very kind of low-key lighting. There is texture as well. I wondered is the helmet part of a body as well? So is it part of a kind of a model statue, etc.? And as part of that, would it have enhanced the image as much as you've placed it centrally in the frame? I've got no issues with that at all. Is actually showing kind of the outline of kind of almost half the body of the super person. So instead of just having a helmet or a head, I've actually can connect it to something as well. Just, you know, it might only have been a helmet. And I think that you could probably come together and actually put together a series of very, very kind of low key images like this. So if you had, I don't know, this was part of a model, you could have the helmet, you then could have the body, and you then could have something else as part of that. And then you've got a bit of a triptych in the same style all the way across. That's something else that you could do. But I thought it was very, very different to most of the other images that we'd seen, and it does work. And that one gets a 15.
Dan Stott.
I can see what you've tried to do, and as much as it's kind of a pattern picture, even though they are very, very similar screws all the way through the frame, you've added the bit at the closest to me where I will start, so starting the bottom left. The screws that are presented there are quite different to the composition that's at the back of the frame. So at least it's not the same all the way through. I like that you've then obviously changed the number in the composition, so you go from one pile to 2 piles to 3, and then a pile of screws. So I have got a bit of a story that's going through, so I can imagine what's going, if this was happening in real life, about putting all of these bits and pieces together. But I think once again, because it is flat lighting, it is very, very grey as part of that conversion, whether you could have made maybe the screws closest to me quite dark as part of that lighting. And then the ones in the middle, which look more galvanized, so slightly brighter, whether you could have put or kind of directed the light to make it a pool of light, and then once again gone darker as part of a recession. So you've got a little bit more interest that you've included. You've kept the same composition, but it's the lighting that's then created something very, very different as part of that. Just something to kind of take away. So that one gets a 14. Quite similar to the cyclist as well. Someone's taken something and made kind of a pattern, and I can see the connection between the snail and the shells. And you've made a snail, and it is a recognizable shape as well, whether it's the same author. I think that it fits together. It's a clever idea as part of, and it definitely fits the theme as part of tabletop as well. Once I've seen it, is there anything else to get from it? And I think probably I want to move on to the next image, but I still think it's a clever idea. And so that one gets a 14. Can we hold that one, please? And the final one is this image there. And I think the lighting makes it. So once again, you've got brighter areas, you've got darker areas. You have got a highlight towards kind of just past the spine of the book, which is on the edge of the frame. However, I don't think that, you know, as part of your composition, are you going to get away with that? I liked it. I also think because not all of the pages are sharp as well, then you've almost kind of introduced a bit of movement in the book. So you can almost imagine that the pages are kind of being flicked through on the book as well. You've also got a reflection. I think that adds to it. It's a simple composition. But I think that it, you know, it is interesting and it does work as well. And that one gets a 15.
Anissa Sadat.
So, 9, yeah. So can we start with image 30, please? I liked this because of the monochrome conversion that it is. So you've got whites, you've got blacks. You've made sure that you've got detail in the blacks by making sure that you've added a reflection to that. So whether it's a glass coffee table, I liked the reflection as well. You can see how there's really only kind of 3 elements in the picture, but they're all connected together. The coffee, the spoon, and the paper as well. There's nothing too sharp on the paper for me to drag my interest away as well, but I just felt that the elements fitted together as part of that. And so that one gets a 16.
Katie Al-Wabi.
Can I have number 1, please? The reason this one's going to get a 16 is what I enjoyed about it was the quality of lighting, especially on the cup. That rim lighting around the edge of the cup and around the handle, even though it's probably been created by the light coming through the window, I think is really, really attractive. I like also, you've got the reflection, really, really simple, but effective, very, very graphical as well. And so that one gets a 16.
Katie Al-Wabi.
Can I have 16, please? So I've already commented on one kind of chess picture, and I just felt that this kind of almost took it a step further. So we already looked at one with 3 chess pieces. I like that the 2 are a different texture to the one that's on kind of knocked over. They're not all standing up, so you can kind of see a kind of a bit of a story that's going on as well. I think the lighting's been controlled. You've still got detail in the blacks all the way through as well. And I think the pieces are quite an appropriate size. So the ones on the left, even though there's 2 and there's only one on the right, I think that the sizes kind of balance each other out as part of the frame as well. So that one gets 16. And can I have image 17, please? I thought this was a creative idea. Got a fairly white base, but you've broken up that kind of whiteness of the base by adding some leaves on the base as well. So I think that breaks it up. I also like the vase. It's an attractive vase. And you can also see kind of the diffraction in the vase as well, which is why the bottom half in the water looks a little bit bigger, a little bit more distorted. And then you've got the hydrangea flower as well. And I think the background, the textured background, I think it is quite suitable as well. You can see that as you could see that as a print on textured paper as well, some kind of permajet paper. It's your personal choice whether you add this kind of page curl to it. I think it adds another point of interest. But I think it probably just would have been as strong without having the page curl added to it at this point. But that one gets the final 16.
Ruth Lockery.
Can I have number 3, please? I really liked the story on this. I liked the lighting. So you've made sure as part of the mirror that's shown that you can see the full extent of the mirror. You've got that rim lighting all the way round as well. I like probably is either a reflection or you've taken the mirror out, and you can really kind of start to see the story. Quite effective. Once again, low-key lighting, but I think it works. And that gets a very deserved 17.
Lucy Wilson.
Can I have 24, please? And as I say, sometimes it's always good to break the rules about rules of thirds. If it deserves to be in the middle, put it in the middle of the frame. And I think this does work as well. Really kind of graphical. Very, very simple, but effective as well. I really do like the stripes and kind of the diffraction that's been caused as part of the water as well. And in some ways, you've got the stripes going from left to right. And then you've also got kind of almost intersecting because you've got bottom left to bottom right. So they are kind of crisscrossing each other. Really, really simple, but effective as well. And that one gets an 18.
No.
18. Can I have image 15? You can see here, so there's three or four elements, and you can see how the dice are connected to the cards and how the card or the ace is connected to the money as well. And you can see the story. And I think the title then justifies having the page curl as well, hence the reveal. And I do think it is a clever idea and it does work as well. And that one gets an 18.
Dina Cordukes.
Can I have image 18, please? I liked this one as well. Really, really simple. I'd actually like to know what it is. I'm sure the author will tell me afterwards. I liked the graduated tones. It almost looks like kind of a bit of War of the Worlds kind of idea. I liked the graduated tones. I think it's absolutely fantastic and a well-deserving 19. And there we are. Someone said it's a juicer for squeezing lemons. There we are. So it just shows you can get some absolutely fantastic still life just from your kitchen. I want to go out and buy one. So someone's going to tell me where I can go and buy one. And so the final image is number 7. And for me, this kind of hopefully kind of puts together everything that I've been talking about as part of monochrome. So you've got 35 quid for a juicer. Someone's just put, flipping heck, expensive taste in Lancaster. Sorry, that distracted me slightly. So hopefully this will be everything that I've been talking about. I've got a base. I've got shape and texture. I think the quality of lighting is absolutely superb all the way through. I've got that dark base. I've got lighting kind of mid area, and I've got dark above as well. You can see where the source of light is coming through. And the object that's in the middle is really, really simple. So I think it's just a roll of paper, but it just shows how, for me, this is kind of what monochrome is all about, shape and texture. And you can do anything just by adding lighting, and you can make some absolutely fantastic shapes. It's pin sharp all the way through. And so that for me is the 20.
Reg Haslam.
So my favourite image of the night was the last one I just judged.